Hi Boss Monsters, this is Johnny and Chris O'Neill from Brotherwise Games, here to answer your questions about Boss Monster. But before we do, we just want to thank you again for your amazing support. We are still completely blown away by this entire process. Totally thrilled to be making our game a reality. And today we just want to answer some of the questions that people have asked us about how the game was made and some of our plans for the future. Alright, now we are going to go through some of the questions and we're kind of going to interview one another and ask the questions. The first one comes from Hector from Pennsylvania. What was the process involving the development of the rules and idea of the game, as well as the games that inspire you?
Yeah, so we get asked that question a lot, not surprisingly. There's a lot of people out there who are interested in designing games, and we really want to encourage that and tell people that it's absolutely doable. If we can do it, you can do it. We've seen it enough that we actually covered it quite a bit in the strategy guide, and we turn people to that. If you haven't seen your strategy guide yet, you actually got an email from us via Kickstarter that has a link to it there. So we'd encourage you to go check that out there, and we cover a lot of that, as well as sort of who we are and some of the information behind our process. Brooks, the boss from New Zealand, now of Washington State, asks, you guys managed to make a fun, full 2 to 4 player game for $20 with shipping included. Most Kickstarters start much higher. It seems like you might not gain much from those orders other than the fact that the game is out there. What were your thoughts behind this first pledge level?
Well, it's true that we actually knew going into it that we weren't making a lot at that $20 pledge level. With the production costs plus the cost of shipping included in that, it wasn't a huge profit. One fact is, we weren't really necessarily in this to make a big profit. We wanted to get the game out there. That was our dream going into all this. But once we realized this could be a little bit bigger, one of the things we were able to do was really encourage people through the stretch rewards to go for some of the higher levels where we were making a little bit more. And I think that was one of the secrets to the success of the campaign. Griffin from Sheffield, UK asks, is Boss Monster the first game that you ever worked on? By worked on, I mean took beyond initial concept. If not, do you plan on going back to any of those older projects?
Okay, so another good question. Boss Monster could actually best be described as, I guess, the great-grandchild of a couple earlier games that had been brewing around and that we've been working on for years. There were some mechanics, some themes, some basically ways of playing in those earlier games that we liked, that we took into Boss Monster, even though those earlier games themselves we feel didn't have the legs to make it to the final production process. We should also say that we've got a couple other games in development. I worked on one at the same time as Boss Monster that we think is a great game. We're not sure it's Kickstarter worthy. And we've got some other games that we're working on right now. In particular, I'm working on a game which we hope will be our next Kickstarter launch. Teacher Mook from Seegertown, Pennsylvania asks, having a group with more than 4 players, I wonder if there's some way to do a variant of the main game for more than 4 players, or if one can be planned for the future.
Sure, now that's something that we have thought about kind of all along. In playtesting, just to make the most of our playtesting resources, we really focused on the 2 to 4 player game, making sure that that was really where it could shine. And we know that people have played 5 player and enjoyed it. We know that that design space exists, but we didn't want to make any promises about it. So what's happening right now is we've got a group of people over at the Board Game Geek forums, and we hope to graduate those over to the Brotherwise forums when those go live soon, who are exploring multiplayer games at 5 players and above. So they're figuring out, how well it works and what changes, if any, you need to make to the card pool and some of the rules of the game. Roy from Trondheim, Norway asks, how have the fans and backers of Boss Monster influenced the game? Any changes or additions brought on by fan ideas?
So besides the obvious fact that everyone who received the prototype is being pretty active right now on our Board Game Geek forums doing some last-minute playtesting of the game and giving us some ideas which we're actually incorporating right now. We actually took a lot of advice from folks on the direction of the Kickstarter campaign. Some of the obvious examples of this would be the Hybrid Heroes, which was an idea that came up in the Kickstarter forums. some of the extra boss monsters, which people were asking for, the holofoils and the tokens, which people got to vote for in the infamous election. I should also say that while Boss Monster was pretty well formed by the time we made it to Kickstarter, and we think that's part of the reason it was so successful, we really are serious about inviting people into the Brotherwise Games forums. Everyone at the extra life level and above is going to be given playtester access on those forums, and the rest of our Brotherwise games that come out are going to come out in print and play version first for folks on those playtester forums, where we'll be very seriously taking those ideas, criticisms, and suggestions and incorporating those into future Brotherwise games. Vance from Oklahoma City asks, I've read that you're going to be planning Boss Monster tournaments at some point in time. Oklahoma City doesn't see many large game events, so I'm worried about being able to enjoy my game in a competitive environment inside of my state. What sort of incentive plan do you plan to use to get local game stores like mine to offer tournaments?
In terms of tournament play, that's definitely something we'd love to see, and we think that the game does support it. But what we really do expect and plan and want to support is play at the store level. So we are putting together tournament packs around the same time as the Tools of Hero Kind release that we hope to make available to stores that include learn to play materials as well as some exclusive promo cards, maybe new bosses or new spell cards available only through those packs that participants can get as participation rewards or even win. So that's something we'd love to do. Also, keep a lookout for us at some of the biggest game conventions where we would love to try to put something together, but any plans in that area are still definitely in their infancy. So a number of people have actually asked a question about whether we have any plans to translate the game.
So one of the things that really inspired us and really got us excited early on was the number of international backers on the Kickstarter for Boss Monster. Not surprisingly, one of the things we were hearing from those international backers was, will there be foreign language versions of Boss Monster, non-English language versions of Boss Monster? We absolutely would love to do that, and it seems like a logical next step for Boss Monster. Realistically, with everything else we're working on, including meeting our expansion expectations for 2013, I don't think we'll see non-English versions of Boss Monster until 2014. Lance from Lake Portland, Oregon asks, what is your overall viewpoint of the game? We know that we have an expansion coming out, but where do you see this game going in the long term, say 5 years or so?
Well, we really hope to see Boss Monster be a game that, like some of our favorite games, is something that can be updated and refreshed on an ongoing basis. So we are big fans, for example, of Ascension, which does a really nice job of keeping the card pool fresh by adding new things. You don't need to buy them to enhance the game experience, but if you want to play and you want a fresh experience, it's there. We would love to see this become a game that game stores everywhere have, and that they know that every year or so they'll be able to get the new update, and that fans will have a new way to play it. So that's really our vision. Beyond the digital stuff and beyond some of the things that we're doing to try to put other Brotherwise games in the pipeline. But for the time being, Kickstarter is still where everything will really begin, and then from there we'll be moving to retail. Boogar the Ogar from Tempe, Arizona asks, are there any plans at Brotherwise Games to develop electronic games like iOS, Android, or PC games?
Yes, Boogar, there absolutely are. In fact, we've been approached by an awful lot of developers who are interested in partnering with us on creating at the very least, an iOS ported version of Boss Monster, a tablet ported version of Boss Monster. This is something we're very interested in. Obviously, because of its sort of retro gaming references, Boss Monster could look very cool in a digital environment. One of the things we decided very early on in terms of maintaining the integrity of the game was that we were going to get the tabletop version right, get the tabletop version launched, and get everything handled there before we started exploring the digital path. So, as with the foreign language versions, this is something that is coming. It's something we're starting to talk about right now and look for partners. But we've got to make sure we get that tabletop version launched successfully before we start spreading ourselves too thin.
All right, so that's it for our Q&A session. Thanks so much for your questions and again for your support. Over the next couple of weeks, we're putting the finishing touches on our actual files as they're going to print, and we will be keeping you updated and in the loop throughout that entire process. Happy New Year, and we cannot wait to deliver this game to you in the year ahead. So thanks so much.